wish him a happy birthday.
Welcome to the Love of the Star podcast. I am Bobby Belt, Dallas Cowboys insider for 105.3 The Fan in Dallas, joined as always by former Super Bowl winning NFL scout Brian Broaddus. He is now the co-host of the G-Bag Nation, 2 to 7 p.m. Central, Monday through Friday on 105.3 The Fan in Dallas. He is also the co-host of the pre- and post-game show on the Dallas Cowboys radio network. And Brian, we have to mention it right off of the top of the show. It is also, when we're recording this, the birthday of our producer,
yes,
Peyton Russell. And let's see if Peyton's actually producing. Let's see if Peyton is actually doing his job right now and standing by. Because if he's standing by, he'll be able to pop himself into the video really quickly and wave hello on his birthday. So Peyton, there he is.
Hi. It's me. I'm here. I finally made it.
Happy birthday, Peyton. He makes his first
Thank you, guys.
his first visual appearance here on Love the Stars. So send Peyton his happy birthday wishes on Twitter at Peyton_Russell1. Brian, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, and I just want to second that on Peyton and a happy birthday. Huge part of what we do here at Love of the Star. I mean, there's a lot of things in the background that revolve around this show that you and I don't always have to deal with. And Peyton is the one that steps up, and he really makes it happen. If there is truly an engine to this show, it's not a couple of guys just hashing it out and talking. It's really what Peyton does, and he is a great teammate. Love working with him. And if you appreciate the Love of the Star, you should appreciate the work that Peyton Russell does.
Absolutely, and that's the last nice thing we'll say all year about Peyton until his
next birthday.
Next year.
Yep, there you go.
So you got 365 days, Peyton, before we say something nice again. Brian, some news out of the Star here on Wednesday when we record this one. Donovan Wilson is finally a full participant at practice. We've got Tyler Smith as a limited participant. Brandon Cooks is a limited participant. All these things trending in the right direction. That's all very positive. We did get a DNP on Zach Martin, who is dealing with the ankle issue. Before we dive into, the returns of Cooks and Smith to a limited fashion and the full return of Donovan Wilson, any concern for you at all about the availability of Zach Martin this week, or do you think they're just playing it smart?
Well, we get the opportunity on 105.3 The Fan. We have the Zach Martin show every Thursday at 4:30. So I'm sure that Gavin Dawson, one of our co-hosts, will ask them right off the jump. I'm sure that the answer from Zach Martin will be, no, don't worry about it. I'll be ready to play. And then you can kind of take that as his word and go forward. I'm not particularly worried about that. I'm interested about the Donovan Wilson one just because of the fact that there's somebody that's going to have to sit in the secondary, or somebody that's going to have to sit on the defense, or somebody that's going to have to sit on offense. And the way that this crew has operated on both sides of the ball, everybody that dresses seems to have an opportunity to do something to help the team try and win a football game. They've got some backup guys, some Awesome Richardson, the TJ Basses, and those guys played last week. But we'll see. Jalen Brooks, what he do last week? He got an opportunity to play in the game, had a key block in the game. Matter of fact, that was able to get Deuce Vaughn to the outside. So it might be 2, 3, 4, 5 plays, but somebody is going to have to come off that field, and that's the great thing about having depth. It's the great thing about being healthy. And as I say that, I knock on wood, which would be my forehead that I'm doing there right now. And, but that's the great thing about the way the Cowboys are built with Will McClay, Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, Mike McCarthy. They've done a really nice job with the depth pieces that they have in a lot of different spots. But you're getting some really good football players that are going to have to come back in the lineup, and good for the Cowboys. But some guys that have shown up and done some good things to help you be 2-0 at this point are going to probably be some healthy scratches.
Yeah, and I mean, Idoga, a guy who is working back from injury, and, after he got hurt in this last game, TJ Bass stepped in and performed admirably in place of Idoga, who was in place of Tyler Smith. So those guys stepped up in a big way for you. We've seen how Marquise Bell and Wanye Thomas have stepped up in place of Donovan Wilson. They're really living up to the whole next man up philosophy.
Yeah, I'd hate to have to tell Bell, and Thomas was a special teams captain last week. And I know captains are a week to week. That's one of the reasons why you don't see Dak Prescott. People are asking me, well, where's Dak's the C patch, the captain's patch and all that. You aren't going to see one of those patches until we get to the playoffs. And then they will elect permanent captains for the playoffs. But it's a week-to-week proposition for these guys to have the opportunity to captain this football team, whether it's on offense, defense, or special teams. So, it's going along really, really well right now for the Dallas Cowboys. The roster the way it is, the way the injuries are coming back, the way of the schedule. I'm going to say this, though, Bob, about the Arizona Cardinals. I'm terrified by games like this. And I'm not trying to scare everybody into, watch out. But this is the former personnel guy in me. I'm a big believer in the desperate team theory. I really am. I feel like that there's times when you feel, when you play a team that's might be 0-2 or on a bad winning streak, you're riding along pretty well. The health of your team's pretty good. All it takes is one of those bad trips. All it takes is 2-3 bad series of a game, and the next thing you know, you're in a fight. The Cardinals have beaten the Cowboys 3 of the last 4 times they have played a game in Arizona. It goes all the way back to, you could go back to Sun Devil Stadium and stuff like that, to where they used to have problems playing when the Cardinals were in the same division as the Cowboys. It's just not a very good place for the Cowboys to play. Am I going to pick the Arizona Cardinals? Probably not. But I'm just saying this is going to be one of those wild times where, hang on to your rear. I don't think this game is going to be easy. I'm just saying that because I don't think Arizona's spirit has been killed yet. Now maybe if you play them in week 12 or week 13 and their record is, 2 wins or 3 wins, then their spirit is probably dead. But right now they're trying to get a win. And the Cowboys are a good football team. And it's just, I hated this. I hated this as a personnel guy when everything seems to be rolling the right way and you play one of these teams that has not won a game yet. I just, sometimes the football gods take one from you or give one to an opponent that they need to get back on track. These are the kinds of games that worry me to death. They really do.
Well, this episode is being dropped on a Thursday morning. We're going to record again on Thursday night and drop that on Friday morning. So Thursday, coming up here in the next segment, we will actually dive into the Arizona Cardinals defense. Brian and I have both taken a look at them. And then on Friday, we'll have the Arizona Cardinals offensive preview for you, how they might challenge the Cowboys a little bit. By the way, I will say this. I think that Josh Dobbs right now is a better quarterback than the one you played last week against the Jets. And that's a guy who didn't look terrible at the end of last year for the Titans against you.
Well, he got his first start. And actually the following week was a kind of a must-win game against Jacksonville. And his numbers were not terrible. For the Cowboys for his first start, they were a little shaky. But the following week, on the must-win, he played well enough. The problem is, like I say, he's been in the league a long time. He just hasn't had a lot of starts in his career.
Yeah,
but we'll get into that we'll get into that for sure.
I think you'll be impressed with how he's looked the first couple of weeks here, Brian. But real quick, let's just talk about how Donovan Wilson fits back in this defense.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I took that as sir.
You're totally good. And where the defense can potentially improve. So I was doing some research the other night, Brian, and I found some interesting points here about this Cowboys defense. So using available play data, which only goes back to 1994 from StatHead, but over the last 30 years, basically, the Cowboys through the first 2 weeks of the season, they have not allowed a second half snap inside their 40.
Yeah.
So the other team hasn't gotten closer than the 41-yard line the first 2 weeks. Cowboys are the only team in the available history to do that in the first 2 weeks of the season. So that's a completely dominant start. They've only had 2 snaps allowed in the second half on their side of the 50 even. Yeah. And those 2 plays resulted in a Micah Parsons sack and a Trayvon Diggs interception. So this defense has been incredibly dominant, particularly in the second half of some of these games here. They've shown that the NFL defines a deep pass as anything 16 yards or further, so over 15 yards. The Cowboys this year have not allowed a completion on any of those throws. Zach Wilson didn't complete anything outside the left hash on Sunday. And so the Cowboys have just been really impressive, really dominant. The run defense has stepped up in a lot of ways. The one area where you maybe feel like they can improve still is occasionally they do get hit by the run, either by a quarterback scramble or something gets blocked up well, and Saquon Barkley goes for a little bit. Is that where Donovan Wilson returning could have another positive impact for this defense? Because Donovan Wilson, obviously, a guy who really plays well when he's able to get going and run downhill and make some hits, plays with a lot of toughness, a lot of physicality. Is that an area right there when you look at areas where the defense can improve? Doesn't Donovan Wilson seem to slide right in and fit right into what it is they could still improve at?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that to your point, and by the way, really good research and going back and finding those things. Those are very great facts. The thing that I think that Donovan Wilson will help you with is the physicality in the middle of the field. And I think the middle of the field is something that, the Cowboys take a lot of pride in. If they've tried to invest in the defensive tackles, Leighton Vander Esch and with Clark, the safeties with Hooker, the play that he made the other day. They gave up the big play, that 68-yard run after catch was a ball that went through the middle of the field. It was a slant. Hooker could have made the tackle right there, and it would have been a nice game, but instead it ends up to being a route that's run inside, a missed tackle, and a big play. And the Cowboys don't, they pride themselves on that. So having Donovan Wilson in the middle of the field, I think it helps you with your tackling. I think it helps you with their physicality. If the Cowboys have an issue on defense, it comes in a couple of different ways. To me, it's how do you handle the quarterback that does scramble, and how do you maintain lane integrity when you rush the passer? And I think when they lose lane or gap integrity when they rush the passer, it turns into potential big gain for the quarterback.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to nitpick Cowboy defense, you're going to say how they rush, how they get up the field. Are they ending up, are three bodies ending up on the left side of the center or the right side of the center? And is that creating natural gaps or cracks or spaces where these quarterbacks have the ability just to take off and run? That's the thing that's hurting the Dallas Cowboys right now. The pass rush is so good that it's causing these quarterbacks just to pull the ball down and run. But it's also so good to the point where it could be, and I'm using the word here, reckless.
Sure.
Because it is in clear attack mode. Clear attack mode. And so are you getting too many bodies on one side of the ball or one side of the center, and it's creating gaps? That's the thing I think that Dan Quinn, AD, everybody, Sharif Floyd, all those guys, I think that's what they're trying to concentrate on right now is how they can prevent quarterbacks from running the ball. Because the one thing I did see about Josh Dobbs is Josh Dobbs will run with the football. You've seen him back up and then take off running before. This is something they're probably going to have to deal with in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, when we talk about the offense tomorrow for the Cardinals, you're going to see a lot of read option stuff. And Josh Dobbs does a pretty good job selling and I think reading it the correct way and making the right decision. He's a good enough athlete to cause you some problems there. When we talk about run defense and, how they're defending the run and some integrity, the gap integrity and everything else, I'm curious about two players before we jump into the Cardinals here and how you think they've played when you've been able to go back and watch the tape. Two young guys who I think they hope are going to be building blocks here on the defense over the next couple of years. How did you feel about Damone Clark, how he played after what was he was probably the weakest link in the Giants game? How do you think he bounced back against the Jets? And then there's been some rumblings from fans who are like, hey, why aren't we seeing Mozzie Smith? Why isn't he flashing? Brian, I don't know about you. The first 2 weeks when I've watched back, I think Mozzie Smith's been fine.
I think Mozzie Smith.
How do you feel about those two?
I think Mozzie Smith. I'm interested in what you think about Clark, but I'm the thing with Mozzie, where Mozzie has to continue to try and figure things out and work to improve, and it's hard to do because if you play next to Osa Odighizuwa, He gets up the field so damn fast off the ball. I mean, his quickness off the ball. And you could tell that Mozzie's a tick late. That's the things that are always going to be an issue. I will say this about Mozzie. I think he did a better job of staying square in this game. I think the awareness, he showed me something the other day that a young guy usually doesn't figure out. Sniffed out a screen, was able to kind of read what was going on. He's playing along the line of scrimmage. He's playing with his hands. Oh, he sees the blockers develop. He sees the back kind of slide. He sees the quarterback drift a little. What does he do? He reads it out. He kind of sniffs it out. He goes that direction. It'd have been real easy for Mozzie to try and just run straight ahead and then have to chase. But he actually found a way to kind of get in on the play. And it was an incomplete play because there were enough bodies over there. But it was a good job on his part, playing with his hands, seeing what's happening to him, and then sliding over to be in position. Damone Clark, I'm waiting for Damone Clark to have one of those games where he is just in on every tackle. And maybe that's unrealistic for him. But Van Der Esch, there comes a time too where, when they get in some of that linebacker, that nickel stuff they play or dime stuff they play, they take Damone Clark off the field, and then all of a sudden, if you could snuff the run like the Cowboys have really done the last couple of weeks, all of a sudden Damone Clark is not a big factor in what you're trying to do scheme-wise. All of a sudden you're playing guys he's not, so he's not as noticeable as some of the others.
Yeah, especially when you consider, if you're snuffing out the run, how much do you need Damone Clark?
Right.
But when he's been in there, he has not been great, I don't feel like, against the run. And you started seeing this past game against the Jets. I thought he was better this week. There weren't any glaring moments where it was like,
but it's scheme things moments. Too. Yeah, there's just there's scheme things that if you don't need him in coverage, and you kind of thought, well, that's something that you're going to have to kind of figure out with him. But his ability to play, I just feel maybe my thought about him is such at a high level, such a high bar, and it's going to take time. It's going to take time with him.
I think you saw the Cowboys this past week. Like I said, Clark was better. His snaps were greatly reduced in this game from the previous week.
Right.
And this was a lot more, all right, we're going to give Marquise Bell some of these snaps in the box.
Because
Marquise Bell's been great so far.
Marquise Bell has figured out, that, and you just gave me a thought. Marquise Bell wouldn't dress for him, would he?
Or
Damone Clark. I mean, if you were trying to get Wilson,
you mean like
Wilson. No, if you want to keep Bell on the field, you wouldn't take Clark out of the lineup.
No,
would you?
I don't think you. I don't think you would just not dress Damone Clark. But they've got to find a box player, somebody in all likelihood to sit.
See, and that's the thing about it. The thing with Bell, he's in for 6 plays and he makes 3 tackles. He's constantly. If Clark played like Bell, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. We'd be, everything looks. Why do I notice 14 more than I notice 33?
Yeah.
That's. I think that's what we have to ask ourselves.
Well, and we'll get our answers soon enough. You're listening to the Love of the Star podcast. The Love of the Star is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, so let's jump into the Arizona Cardinals. I got a chance to watch them a little bit today.
Oh, good
Take
for
some
you.
different notes. Now, the Cardinals are missing in this game. They'll be missing L.J. Collier, the former TCU product. They're going to be without Carlos Watkins, the former Dallas Cowboy.
Both with bicep problems for both of them.
Yeah, he went down kind of awkwardly when that play occurred. Lecky Fotu will be back, a guy I know you were high on coming out of the draft.
Yes.
And then the biggest name that they're going to be missing, a guy who really wrecked shop the last time these teams played at AT&T Stadium at the end of 21 season. Budda Baker is going to be out for the foreseeable future, and that is a big boost for the Cowboys. But, Brian, as we look at this Arizona Cardinals defense and we look for weaknesses, we talked last week, hey, the weakness you got to find for this game is move CeeDee Lamb around. They are not going to move corners. Let CeeDee Lamb find the weakness, get the most favorable matchup for him, and go to town. And the Cowboys were able to do that with a lot of success. So as we look at this, before we dive into the specific details, what is your overarching thought as to the best way for the Cowboys to attack this Cardinals defense?
Well, it's a team that plays a 3-4 or an odd front. And what is interesting about him is, and I've said this on a couple of different platforms, so if people are listening to me on all these platforms, my apologies for repeating myself on some of this, but this is what I see. When you watch them, it's going to be a couple of big down linemen, and then everybody else is going to be standing around like they're waiting for a bus stop. And it's kind of very similar to what the Cowboys do. When you see maybe one or two guys down, and then a bunch of linebackers, safety guys kind of hanging around the box, defensive ends, edges, guys like that standing up. This team is right now third in the NFL in sacks. And you wouldn't think of that because the front looks like kind of like a power front with those big guys, and they play a bare front. So they're going to cover the nose, they're going to cover the two guards, on occasion. So what they're going to do is they're going to not let you adjust. They're going to make you have to do one-on-one blocks. I think it's going to be a really, really important game for Tyler Biadasz. He's going to have a guy on his nose. It's not very often that he has a guy that plays completely on his nose, but there's snaps with the Cardinals. You see him just that heavy nose. Okay, so now what do you have to do? You have to make calls, you have to make adjustments, you have to snap, and then you have to block. There's a lot going on. Tyler Biadasz is, one of your better players, but there is a lot going on when you put a guy on his face that's breathing the same air he is, that close to him. But I really, the thing with Arizona is, I think their secondary is the weakest link of the whole thing. Where I do respect, and this they've got a couple of guys that I feel like can really rush, but this Dennis Gardeck that they got, and I don't know, Bobby.
He's been a special teamer most of his life.
He is a relentless SOB, is what he is, and you look, he's already got 3 sacks in 2 games. He had a time in his life where I think he had 7 sacks at one time. And then, so he's had some production before. But this is a relentless dude, I just
he's the motor runs hot guy. That's
all
it.
The time. And he's number 45. And when you're watching him, you better have him blocked through the whistle. You better, because if it's play breaking down, you're blocking him, he now gets free, he is going to run your guy down. He is that type of player. And so, I saw this group against the Giants, 3-man rush, got a sack. Because of the effort that guys like the Gardeck, he plays with, and my guy Dimu KG,
Victor Dimukeji, a guy who, that's another one. Those are if you're going to look at 2 guys to potentially try and get some pass rush going, I think it would be those 2.
Yeah.
Those 2 guys are both. Dimukeji's going to flash. Gardeck will flash. He's not just a pass rusher. Gardeck will make plays in the run too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. These are guys. Players. Yeah, Victor is one of those guys that he plays. Like, I saw him make tackles and the ball's dislodged. He's that kind of a physical guy. So, it's not household names that are playing defense for the Arizona Cardinals. But I do feel like the weakness is their secondary. I think when you look at, Kazir White, I think is, with the linebacker, I think he's a little bit of a gambler in the way that he plays. But he gets near a tackle, he's ripping at the ball. So, you're like, okay, well, here you are, maybe you're a ball carrier. This number 7 comes flying up. He's got the tackle, now he's ripping, and all of a sudden the ball's on the ground. Instead of maybe driving in and score, it's a turnover. That's what this crew can kind of do. But they have issues in the secondary. They have some issues. I think Catrell Clark, I think, is a good player. As a rookie,
Clark is not always in the wrong spot.
No,
he's there
no,
a lot of times.
no.
He's what the thing that used to frustrate everybody about Chidobe Awuzie, where it was
Yeah.
like he's right there, he just
he didn't
doesn't
make the play.
That's Clark that I've seen on tape so far.
Yeah.
He's there and he just doesn't make the play.
Yeah, but him and you mentioned we talked about with Marco Wilson. Marco Wilson had a terrible game against the Giants.
Marco Wilson has bad eyes. Eyes are a killer in the secondary.
He will gamble. I think he's ultra aggressive. I use the word ultra there in the way he plays. I mean, he's not afraid to gamble, but I've seen him but I have seen him go right through a receiver to knock a ball down. I think him and Clark, what they'll do is they're willing tacklers. They'll flip sides. And I was trying to figure out, and I've said this on a couple different platforms again, I was trying to figure out why they play left and right and then they flip. In college, you could say, oh, he's a boundary corner. He's on the sidelines. Oh, he's a field corner. He plays because of the hash marks and how wide they are. I'm trying to kind of get a beat why Clark and Wilson, they change sides. But they do. And so, but the problem that I think they have, Bobby, is there's separation in the way they play. I think there's going to be opportunities for balls that go down the field. Now, you better be ready to max protect this thing. You better be ready to keep the back in, keep a tight end in, set it up, have all your blockers, and then let Dak launch the ball. With Cooks, we've mentioned Gallup about a potentially having a big game. Now that I've watched Arizona's defense, this was where Michael Gallup can help you with the 9 route, that vertical passing game. Him, Cooks, would not be one bit surprised if Mike McCarthy blocks that thing up, goes max protection, and then takes a couple of shots down the field throwing the football on these guys. Because I don't think that Wilson and Clark can run all that well. I really, really don't.
I mean, Wilson's got good time speed. I just think he doesn't know what he's looking at most of the time.
Well, there's separation when you watch him play. There's some separation.
There absolutely is. And that's why I said there's difference, obviously, between time speed and football speed.
Right.
Tony Pollard, I think, timed at a 4.5. Tony Pollard's faster than a 4.5 on the football field.
Tony Pollard runs 4.5 in pads.
Yeah.
That's how we should time everybody in full pads. That's your real speed right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I watch this defense, though, I think when you watch them go against the Giants, you watch the way they play. They are able to get some pass rush. I think Gardeck's good. I think Dimukeji's good. I do think that the Cowboys have a shot to block this up, though. I think they have a shot to block this up without having to go max protect. But if you wanted to go max protect, this is, like I say, it is a messy secondary. With Wilson is undisciplined. The safeties don't there's a lot of stop and look like this.
Yes.
There's a ton of tape where they're just looking at each other like this in the secondary. They are completely confused in the back end with each other. I will say one other player I want to highlight as a positive before we continue to drill down on the defense a little bit. And Cowboys fans are familiar with him from his time with Philly last year. I think Kaiser White's been good for them at linebacker.
Yeah, Kaiser White, like I said, he's going to rip at the ball. He
will cover the width of the field, and he'll do in the run or the pass.
He'll blitz too. He'll blitz too. But keep an eye too on Kayvon Wallace, who covers. He's a guy you mentioned Philadelphia. He's a guy safety that will cover the tight end. So with Budda Baker being injured, the hamstring injury and all that, him dealing with all that, not being available, Kayvon Wallace will be a guy that'll be put in some duty of having to do some. But I will say this, Bobby, their coaches really, really, really like to show blitz, and then they'll back out and then back out. But then there are other times where they will completely sell out. They like I said, it looks very similar to how the Cowboys pass rush with bodies standing around, but it is Dallas has got to sort that out because they're going to try and trick you. They're going to try and show you blitz and then back out and then run in the area. And then maybe, Dak, we've talked about Dak. What are the worst interceptions that Dak throws? When he doesn't see a defender, when he doesn't see a drop linebacker or a safety that slides over or a corner that plays off and then goes in, it's supposed to be in the flat, then all of a sudden is, in the hook zone. That's the thing that Dak, they're going to try and fool Dak with some of their looks. But you also have to be careful. You have to be careful because, like I say, this guy's got a sack with a 3-man rush. Maybe that's a little bit about what the problems the Giants have. But if you're telling
Giants
me,
were hurting on the interior, obviously we know that, and they were missing Andrew Thomas for much of that game. They'll be without him again this week. So I do understand that context. I'll say this: I think that we mentioned him earlier, and I said it to you before we started, Brian. But the guy they're going to miss this week, I think they are going to miss Carlos Watkins.
Yeah,
that was a guy who, when he was in there, I thought made some plays, and I thought that it showed up on tape that they missed him when he went down with the bicep injury.
No, and they've done it. To me, Carlos Watkins is one of those guys. He plays square. He's always been a guy that's kind of been able to play the run pretty well, get off blocks.
I think this team wanted him back. I just don't think it worked out, but I think they would have welcomed him back.
Well, I'll tell you what, and let me give you, if I could give you this one more guy as I was going through my notes here, and where did my guy go? Oh, Kevin Strong. There's another guy named Kevin Strong, and I like what I've seen. He's kind of a backup guy, defensive tackle, but with Kevin Strong, you have to be careful with him because he'll line up, and then you think you have him scooped or reached, and he'll play backdoor. He'll just go behind the block, and then next thing you know, he's working towards the ball. So, it's one of those things where you sell out to run block. You reach hard, you step hard one way, and here's Martin and Steele stepping hard to the left, and then all of a sudden, Kevin Strong finds a way just to backdoor Martin. Maybe Steele doesn't cut him off. Now you got to tackle for loss. So they've got some. It's not household names, and they're 0-2. I'm not trying to sell anything. I am going to say desperate team theory. They should have beat the Giants. They should have beat the Giants. They blew that game. So go in there and find a way to destroy their will to compete. But defensively, kind of a mid-pack, but they are third in the league in sacks, and Dallas has got to do a good job of protecting their quarterback.
Okay, so let's run two scenarios through really quickly before we get to the mailbag here. First one for you, Brian, and we will both answer this one. But how do the Cardinals make life difficult on the Cowboys on offense? Like, if we're coming out of the game on Monday morning, we're talking about, man, that was a really tough time actually for the Cowboys offense. What do you think we're talking about on Monday morning? What is it that caused the Cowboys to struggle? What was it that the Cardinals were doing?
Well, not having to take a look at their offense yet. Could the quarterback run be a problem?
Just specifically for the Cowboys offense? What
the Cowboys offense? Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, for the Cowboys offense, they don't identify the front. They don't identify. Biotish is covered. He's got a guy on his nose. They're trying to he's trying to make adjustments. They're screaming. They can't get the adjustments. By the way, it's going to be, I think, a very pro Cowboy crowd in Arizona. It usually is. Yes. But to me, they get in trouble where all of a sudden they were showing blitz. No, they back out. No, they're going to show blitz. And then you get comfortable like, oh no, they're going to back out. Then the next thing you know, they blitz. Where to me, what could give the Cowboys problems is if they don't identify the front correctly and they don't identify linebackers or secondary blitzers, and all of a sudden now linemen are letting guys through, backs aren't sure who they're supposed to pick up. There's a little bit of that hesitation. Dak gets hit, ball on the ground, Arizona's ball, that kind of thing. That's the problem I anticipate, or shouldn't say anticipate. That would be the problem that I would worry about, that this team is going to give you a bunch of different looks, and then they're going to, from those looks, either bring pressure or drop. And if you drop, all of a sudden you're Dak Prescott. You've got to be sure, though, you throw that ball inside, all of a sudden there's a drop linebacker or a drop safety or somebody or drop edge, and then you throw the ball right in the guy's chest because you're trying to hit the slant behind it, because you think you're going to get a blitzer. That's the thing that scares me, that they don't, if there's going to be a problem, that they don't identify the front seven correctly.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's a lot of the similar stuff. Look, there's so much about timing that we're talking about here. So one of the things we haven't talked about yet, the Cardinals do have a tendency to play kind of up in your face in the secondary. Mm-hmm. They are kind of, right up on you and press most of the time. So if they're able to knock off the timing on some of these quick routes, if the Cowboys do struggle with guys like Gardeck or Dimukeji or Zaven Collins, somebody who I haven't talked about here, if they struggle with some of those guys up front, and then in the quick pass and the timing's off, if you allow two linebackers who are not bad in coverage, I don't think, in Kaiser White and Chris Barnes. We haven't talked about Barnes either. I thought Barnes has looked okay when I've seen him.
They've been dealing with some injury there too.
That's where I think you could see the Cowboys, if we're talking about if they do struggle, and I don't think this is going to necessarily give them problems, but if they struggle, I think that's what we're talking about. Right. Prescott to the receivers, these coverage linebackers were able to make plays in the middle of the field. Cowboys weren't able to hold up. Now, if the Cowboys have a lot of success on Sunday, what are we talking about, Brian? What is it that we're going to say, man, they were able to really go to town on the Cardinals with this aspect?
They continued the balance that they've had, their ability to run the football with their ability to throw. They're going to protect well. I believe that you're going to see some big plays from the receivers. I think there's going to be some shots down the field for Dak Prescott to make. I feel like this is a defense that will struggle a little bit to have to defend the middle of the field. Their linebackers are super aggressive, like I say, coming forward, and they're involved in the passing game. So between the safeties and the linebackers, there's that middle of the field. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys try and say some deep shots, but also attack the middle of the field, especially on third down. When maybe it's a 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 6. Wouldn't be surprised one bit if you see some stuff materialize for the Cowboys in the middle of the defense and then down the sidelines.
Yeah, I think for me, the area where I think that you're right, they are going to have some opportunities for big plays. I think if we're talking about the offense having a great day on Monday, what we're going to look at is the fact that, we've talked about everything's quick and underneath and timing based. Yeah. If the Cowboys are going to take shots downfield, this is the week for us to see it happen.
Absolutely,
if we come out of this game and everything is 20 yards and in, that tells me this is just the offense.
Yeah.
And these are the concepts that they run, because I think it's not out of the question to think you could block it up with 5 up front.
Right.
And if you're able to block it up with 5, like I said, bad eyes on Marco Wilson, miscommunication, it feels like, between the safeties and the corners a lot of times. Clark, a guy who's in position but never finishes the play.
Right.
You can take advantage down the field. So I think if we're talking about the offense having a big day, what we're talking about is, Dak potentially throwing for like 350, like hitting big plays down the field. And so those opportunities will be there for the Cowboys on defense if they choose to take them down the field. You are listening to the Love the Star podcast. The Love the Star is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, it is now time for our Dean Julia Love of the Star mailbag. It's where we turn things over to our dear sweet listeners for their questions. Let them kind of take some things over. First question here from Sean. If Cooks, Tyler Smith, and Martin have no setbacks this week, and we finally get to see the starting offense at full strength, where does the Cardinals defense look to exploit to give them their best chance of slowing down Dak and this offense? So like we were just talking about, Brian, a lot of the disguises and things like that, that's where the Cowboys would struggle. But what do you think the game plan actually is going to be from Jonathan Gannon and crew? Do you think they are going to try to blitz a little more? Do you think they are going to try to break some things through?
Metrics will tell you they're one of the least blitzing teams in the league. I think they're near the bottom when it comes to blitzing. That's at least through 2 games. So to me, I think they're going to try and do it through disguise is what they're going to do. But I just don't think they can live by that alone. The Giants, I think that the Giants were a compromised offensive line. They're not as good. We've seen that with our own eyes. The Commanders, I feel like that the Commanders have some good offensive linemen, but there were some times where they're able to get some pressure, just by rushing their down guys and then you bringing those linebackers and stuff. I think that they saw the Jets film with the Jets just kind of rushing 4, and they didn't get home. This might change Jonathan Gannon's tune a little bit, that we have to maybe come after Dak. Maybe we have to play out of character a little bit. I think how they design their packages, their rush packages, but when they do them, you can't. I don't think you could go through a whole game not blitzing, but I kind of feel like that they're going to have to disguise, and they're going to have to try and fool Dak into some issues, whether him having to throw the ball away. But I do see them bringing blitz, even though the metrics tell me that they don't blitz. I think they're going to have to supplement it to try and get past this Dallas Cowboys offensive line that's done a pretty nice job in protection.
Yeah, when we talk about blitzing too, I mean, look, we mentioned that this secondary has had trouble before. Is that part of the evaluation you think for Jonathan Gannon? Is like, look, if we don't blitz, we're exposing what is already a secondary with bad tendencies.
Yeah, but look, like I said, I think the Commanders have a good group of receivers. I think the Cowboys have a really good group of receivers. I just think there's some tendencies that need to be broken if you're the Cardinals, because your opponent, you look at, and Gannon understands he's played against Dak Prescott. I mean, he's had a different group of rushers, of course, but he's also known there's some things about Gannon that one of the reasons, like Philadelphia fans, like, where's the pressure? Where's the blitz? Where's the creativity? There were some things that were said about him, and this might just be his MO. This might be, hey, I'm just going to do it this way. I'm going to show you. But man, they get in a lot of looks and then dive out of there. I could see them getting in looks and saying, no, we've got to try and get somebody home before Prescott gets that ball out. He knows he has a problem with his two corners. He knows that.
At the end of the 21 season, the Cardinals beat the Cowboys at AT&T Stadium, and they had a really successful day, kind of, getting to Dak Prescott, making things tough on him. Budda Baker's not playing this week, but I did want to go find this quote because this was something that I thought was really interesting at the time. Jane Slater, who I work with at the NFL Network, interviewed Budda after the game and asked how they were able to disrupt the offense. And he said, we knew we had to disguise. Dak Prescott is a really good quarterback. We knew that if we just showed a static coverage, he was going to dice us up. So we disguised a lot. Everyone focused on doing their job. Each and every play, one play at a time, just do your job. Everything else was going to take care of itself. So kind of what we talked about there, Brian, a little bit is that disguising coverages, trying, mess up the pre-snap read for Dak a little bit is going to be a big focus for the Cardinals. Next question here, and we've gotten a version of this from several people today. I'll ask the first one here from De La Cruz, who's asking how many drops until Hendershot loses playing time. And the other variation of that is a little more, we get somebody asking when, Luke Schoonmaker is going to finally take more of the snaps away. We had somebody else asking, do we envision Schoonmaker overtaking Ferguson as tight end one at any point this season? I do find it interesting that Schoonmaker has been put behind Hendershot to this point, especially with some of the drops that Hendershot's had. But Hendershot's also done a really good job blocking early on. But you would think you're not going to lose much of that going to Schoonmaker. So I don't know. I'm trying to figure out the tight end combination as it is. I think they appear pretty committed to Jake Ferguson as the one at this point. And maybe down the road that changes. But I think for this season, Ferguson's probably the one. But it is interesting to think, Brian, do you think Schoonmaker at any point soon becomes the number 2 in the rotation?
Possibility, but to me, I'm totally okay with what's going on with the tight end room right now. Let me get through 5-6 games, maybe even get to the bye and start to think about, do we need to make some changes here? I just wish that Hendershot would have put his right foot in the ground and just burst for the goal line, instead of kind of, just kind of maybe reading the edge, reading Hunter Lipke's block really not the right way. Didn't feel like he had the speed to get to the corner. Well played by the Jets, but he's got to put his foot in the ground and score. They've had some drops. They've had some things. I thought the tight ends as a whole played pretty well last week. I really did. I don't have a problem with what's going on right now. I just think they're finding roles for these guys, and I really believe with all my heart, because as you know, the draft show, I was a huge fan of Luke Schoonmaker. I think Michigan did him no favors with their offense, the way they used him, because I think he catches the ball better than what we've even seen. And for a big guy, he's a good route runner. And I just don't see him coming off the field. But right now, let him get 2 or 3 more games in. Let him have, maybe he gets 3-4 targets, 3 of them are first down catches or whatever, and then you can make the determination that, okay, he's ready to be that guy. I think in week 3, we need to just kind of keep the tight ends in the order they're in now, and then let this thing play out by maybe week 6, week 7, you'll have a different view.
Question from JC here. What needs to be done to improve the red zone efficiency? Is it X's and O's or execution?
Execution.
Brian, I know you felt very much like it was execution.
Absolutely. Because the X's and O's were fine. There was some and we did creativity talk. If you go back and watch the episode that we did Monday after the game, we talked about what were the issues. Tyron Smith had two bad plays. He had a critical holding that brought back a touchdown, and then he also had the situation where he also just completely missed the block with the block, and the Jets defensive tackle Quinnen Williams was able to make a 2-yard loss on the play. So those are the kinds of things that you're going to deal with. I felt like the Jets covered you pretty well when you tried to run tight bunch and put Tolbert and get him lost in the traffic. Like you're kind of like, we're going to put him over here. The play is going to start. He's going to delay, and then he's going to go to his left. But I almost said Eagles. There's 3 Jet defenders standing over on the cross. Dak gets sacked. Nowhere to go with the ball. Probably should have just thrown it out of bounds on that particular time. But to me, it is more about, and I said about the Hendershot. Plant the right foot. Boom, dive for the goal line. You're a big guy. Just take the ball. Just dive for the goal line. You're a foot away. Don't get tackled. It was just, it didn't work out great, but there are some very creative things that they're trying to do. And I think these things will improve. I also do believe, Bobby, one last thing. I do believe that Mike McCarthy was calling plays in a way also to try and see how tough his offense was. That they really, there's no Ezekiel Elliott anymore. We had, Zeke was always hand the ball to him inside the 6. He was going to get to the 2. Hand the ball to him again. He might get to the 1. Hand the ball to him again. He was going to score. There was a certain element of toughness with Ezekiel Elliott running the ball and a certain element with the way they blocked. I think that Mike McCarthy was testing that a little bit in this play calling this last week.
Last question here, and we can kind of build off of what you just had talked about there with what they potentially missed with Ezekiel Elliott, and maybe they need to go look for a goal line type of back or a red zone type of back. But Jacob wants to know, has Deuce Vaughn surpassed Rico as running back 2 already? Rico played a few more snaps than Deuce. I agree.
Absolutely
I think they found some change-up moments for Deuce, and I think they'll try to do that moving forward. But I still think Rico is their number 2 running back.
I'm not sitting. I totally appreciate what Deuce Vaughn brings. I'm going to say this, and it's probably going to piss people off, and that's not my intent, but this is just my thought. I think they went to the Deuce Vaughn package a series or 2 early in that football game the other day. You're 7-0, you get a 3 and out, you get the ball back, you find a way to drive that and get another touchdown, you effectively have killed the Jets 14 points. You run Deuce in there, you have a couple of plays where it's close, he has the juggle, maybe a little nerves there with the ball. He's usually a very clean catcher of the football, but then you had to punt. So you wasted an opportunity there. If you run that package maybe right before half, or you run that package the start of the second quarter, or however you want to play it, I think it would have been better served than running it the second series of the game. I went from feeling like, and I know you and I talked about this, and shame on us, I guess, would he be a healthy scratch? And here they are. They throw second package of the game is him running the football. Rico Dowdle, you're going to need him in this game this week, Rico Dowdle, and I'll tell you why. Because if Arizona does bring pressure where they bring linebackers and stuff like that, which which the metrics will tell you they haven't, but if all of a sudden they said, our best chance is pressuring Dak Prescott this way, then you're going to need somebody to blitz pickup. Nothing against Deuce Vaughn. His lack of height will cause problems at times. He wasn't asked to do that at Kansas State. He was asked to carry the football and catch the football, and he was very, very good at doing both. So I think this week though, it needs to be Rico Dowdle going forward.
And by the way, Deuce, of course, had the nice play in space with the catch, and then followed it up with the run.
Yeah,
there's still time and place, I think, where Deuce Vaughn can be used.
Great job by Jalen Brooks with a really great block on the edge to get him on it. Deuce Vaughn will have his day in the sun. I just felt like that it was a little early in that Jets game the other day.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But yeah, it was a good block there from Jalen Brooks. If anybody has a chance to go back and watch, you should check it out. That does it for us here on The Love of the Star. We will be back with you guys again tomorrow, which will be Friday when you're hearing this. And so we will be back with the final episode, our picks, a preview of the Cardinals offense and how the Cowboys can attack them. For Brian Broaddus, I'm Bobby Belt. We will talk to you guys again later. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.